This is something called the art of starting something when you're not ready, or art of starting insufficient, incomplete. You might have a lot of ideas about starting a new business, starting or anything in life, trying a new sport, whatever that comes with new opportunities for us. But we might end up postponing that thing. There are two reasons. The main thing that keeps us from going is that we are afraid of losing the game. We are afraid to be beginners. We're afraid to make mistakes, which has led us to somewhere we are, led us to be stuck. And that's something like a not going through life. Life feels like going when you go with it. It's like a dance. You just get back from life what you have given to that. So all in all, I believe when we tend to do something truly and that is not done by us, just we think we're not good enough to start something like that. We unconsciously imagine starting that new thing. For example, let's bring up some learning a new instrument. We imagine ourselves doing the thing and then constantly losing to ourselves, and then might think like, okay, that would destroy my confidence, I will not begin something like that. And then we end up not doing and having that passion all in our life, thinking that the barrier is to be a beginner. But everything begins like evolution. Even if you look at the history of biology in our universe, it started from nothing. When you're building something from scratch, it's going to repeat something, even if it's incomplete, insufficient, so that it could end up being something so diverse, so complicated, and so sophisticated. Even if we look back into the history that humankind created the computers, it actually so beautifully sophisticated. Look, we first began to create softwares and other things, and then now we are actually implying the method that human mind works into the computer, so that they create AI and other systems that work based on neural networking and so other things that I'm not going to dive into that. But the most important thing is that everything starts when it's not good. Everything begins when everything else is sophisticated enough. Biggest fear, which was the fear of failing something, fear of disappointing myself from being a beginner in something. And then I started to tell myself, imagine you're 80 years old or whatever the oldest version of yourself that you can imagine, and you're telling yourself or beloved one around you that, well, I haven't started that instrument, I haven't worked out through that sport that I loved, I didn't start that idea that I had. Why? Because I was afraid to lose? That meant for me that I was afraid of living. If you're afraid of losing, you're afraid of living, because life is a constant change in conflicts through winning, losing, and that repeats itself. You cannot escape from being a beginner, but you can go through that difficulty of making mistakes and fixing them and being a beginner so that you can be a master one day. There are very professional people in different fields that they definitely used to be beginners one day, used to be failures, used to start at some age that we might think it's just too late, but they started very good. There are thousands of examples out there that you might even bring up something for yourself. Last year, I was through a lot of things. I was through a major year of studying for getting accepted into my lovely university that I'm currently studying in. So one day I'll talk about that, but no. Let me tell you about the beginning. I wasn't sure how to begin. I wasn't sure about the resources I wanted to study. I wasn't even sure about how to counsel with. I wasn't sure about anything. But yet, I started from anything that was around me. I found books that belonged to my sister. I found books that were too old for the current study, but I started studying them. I started solving problems. I started searching through the internet for how to solve blah 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 blah. And then I found myself doing the right thing after a week, unconsciously. And then I found someone to consult with. After 3 weeks, I counseled to the same person, and he told me, your questions now are more targeted because you have started. When you dive into the process, you know what to ask. You know to seek for something that truly matters. Most of us imagine that if I start from not knowing anything, not knowing my resources, not knowing what I want to do, not knowing my exact path, then I would be wasting my time, which is another fear that I wanted to mention. Wasting our time, which is completely sane, okay? But there's something. If you spend time gathering information instead of starting the task itself, starting the process itself, that would also be a waste of time. You might think, okay, I'm just collecting information to begin very perfectly. Well, there is nothing called beginning perfectly. Because when you begin and you keep going, there will be a time that are better than when you started. That's definite. That's the definition of progress. You will be better than the day you started. So you will always look back and say, well, I was a beginner. That day wasn't good. That thing wasn't good. Because that's a part of the process. You're going to go through an alteration and be the best version of yourself through the end of that work or through the work itself. So that's obvious that you will look back and say, wow, that's how far I've come. So start from not knowing things. Start from what you are now and gather information. Prepare yourself through the way for the thing that you want to begin. And you keep postponing. That could be a very diverse range of things. That could be from to try a new recipe, try new instruments, or go through a year of study maybe, or maybe learning a new language, whatever. Even restarting something that you have been abandoning for a year or for more than years. That's also working, because when you abandon something, for example, for me that was chess. I used to be a good chess player. I had an international rating, but I abandoned that for a few years, and then I wanted to start again. I accepted the fact that when I attend to the tournaments, I will not be as good as I used to be. I will lose some games, and that's acceptable. Because that's the art of starting, even that's coming to be restart. Restart means that you will be a bunch better at remembering things, but that will be still having that insufficient beginnings. And the beginning doesn't end up with beginning new things. When you have begun something and you are at the middle of the process, you go through that, and there are times that you're not as good as you used to be. You're not as let's say energetic as the other days if it's a constant study year or something. Yeah, I'm not as good as I thought to be, and that requires another restart in the middle of your own process. For example, the year that I was mentioning through my speaking, I started that. I was very good, and that ended up to be very good for me. 3 months before my exam, my final exam, I was like not in the mood. We had one exam, and then we had to have another finals after a month. So everyone would feel like they were in a war, or they were like tired of the process because it was long. It's like a marathon. Would be someone who begins and keeps that steady steps. I restarted. I wasn't quitting anything. I just was tired. So I told myself I will continue doing the thing that I'm doing with smaller steps, like studying 2 hours a day instead of 6 or 7. Studying from the resources that I know are familiar to me, and then I will change them, increase the problems that I solve daily or in other ones. And then that happened to be the perfect start. There is nothing called the perfect start. There's something called incomplete beginnings, when you don't feel you're completely ready. You've read every article about beginning a perfect, for example, study program or something. You just dive into that. There's a saying, I have heard that, I have read that in the book named Brida from Paulo Coelho many years ago. But that quote got me thinking a lot. And I don't remember the exact quote itself, but it was like this: life is like a dark night in the jungles, in the woods, and you don't see any light. Everything is dark. You don't know where to step. You don't know where is the wild animal around you, where is the tree around you, where is the shelter. You don't know anything. And then you step. You have faith in yourself. You will step and you will get the sensation that what is wrong. You will go through people, even you can meet others in that darkness. And that applies to our every moment. We might not exactly know what's life bringing to us the next moment, the next hour, the next thing, but we yet have to step outside of this dark wood and night in the jungle and then find our way, is what I see it. So starting complete and accepting you're free to make mistakes, you're free to be a beginner, and that's not something to be mocked for. We have to be beginners. We have to be beginners. We have to let ourselves start from somewhere. So the fact that you see yourself and simultaneously you can find yourself a successful person while being a beginner. But there's a but. When you're feeling the lack of confidence, you'd better first do something that you're at least good at. That could be as easy as making a tea. So for example, let's bring up another example. You want to be a good pianist, okay? And you don't know anything about piano. Tell yourself, you would imagine yourself being a good pianist. You will imagine that. You will give yourself the confidence. And meanwhile, you have to remind yourself that requires courage to begin when you don't know anything, starting from scratch. That to maintain everyday practices so that you can make something after a year, after 2 years, and etc. You have to remind yourself that every little victory, every little note that you play, every little good song that you play is a big victory, so that you can step by step be the person that you have imagined and you've created the confidence for yourself. And that beginning, that making the mistakes, that not knowing the claviers, that changing the claviers, that not being able to perform the first notes, don't stop you from continuing, because you have a vision, you have a promise to yourself, and you have accepted that these things are coming. These are the path for success. You will be a beginner. You can't escape the chapters. It's like a book. It's a chapter of being a beginner, making mistakes, fixing your mistakes, and then losing, and then bringing up again. Those little victories are like steps that bring you up. And then after those chapters, there will be good chapters. Dance class when I was around 12 or 11 years old. Our coach used to tell us, look at me when you dance. Don't look at yourself in the mirror, because you will see something awful because you don't know the actual movements. Look at me, learn, practice, repeat, and then when you have come to the way that you can dance with the specific song and the movements that are required for that, we will perform together, and you can then look at the mirror. And that applies to life as well. Don't look at the failure. Look at the path that you want to reach. Look at that. And then keep going. Keep going until the time you can stop and tell yes. Now I can look at myself in the mirror. And that day came for me. I used to never look at the mirror and look at my coach and then repeat the movements. And after a year, I was able to look at the mirror and perform my own movements for specific songs, and then other kids in our class repeated after me. So it was a good thing to learn, and to learn from everything and everywhere, and then apply it in our other paths. That's something very good that taught me a lot of things. Yeah, that was this. I just wanted to mention the fact that many times in my life, starting from not knowing where to start, has led me to many great victories. Maybe these victories don't consider to be very great, but they were great to me. They created paths that I really loved. I just mentioned 2 fears: fear of failure, fear of wasting time through starting from not knowing, and those are kind of related to each other. And then I brought up the ideas that I have against those fears. I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, just enjoyed sharing my ideas with you guys. Until next time.